Roanoa Zoro, the clear right-hand man of the newly dubbed Yonko Straw Hat Luffy, the very man who permanently scarred Kaido after only one other swordsman in history could, the progenitor of the three sword style who was steadily on his way on becoming the world's greatest swordsman and also could coat his swords and conquer his haki, known as the King of Hell. After collecting so many feats throughout the course of the Wano arc, what more does this already legendary swordsman need to do to reach the status of the current #1 swordsman, Dracule Mihawk? Actually, I think he needs more than you may believe, and today I'm here to explain to you how Zoro will be able to reach that next level. First off, let's start by going over what Zoro currently has at his disposal that may allow him to close the gap between him and his goal. Enma, the King of Hell. During the Wano arc, Zoro was given a great sword, Enma, by Kozuki Hiyori in exchange for his previous sword, Shisui. And oh man, was it worth it. You see, Enma is able to draw Zoro's dormant Ryo haki that was part of the reason why he was able to scar Kaido during the battle on Onigashima. Zoro was then able to realize that Enma had been testing him in his fight against King and came to the conclusion that he needed to pour out all of his armament and Conqueror's haki at once to truly utilize the blade at its full potential, also known as King of Hell mode. Now, how exactly will Zoro be able to use Enma to get to the next level that I spoke of earlier? First off, he needs to optimize the King of Hell mode completely. Right now, Zoro isn't able to use this ability for an extended period of time before running out of haki. To do so, I believe that Zoro needs to learn to maintain his Conqueror's coding at a level that satisfies Enma without going overboard. This may be possible by relying less on Enma and evening out his Conqueror's haki on his two other swords, Sandai Kitetsu and Wado Ichimonji, the latter being the more important sword and also our next topic, the first sword. A black blade. Wado Ichimonji, the blade that has been with Zoro the longest and the one he originally pinned his dreams on. I believe that this sword will be Zoro's most important in the final saga. Not only was this weapon given to him by Kuena's father, it is also the blade that made Zoro develop the three sword style in the first place. After her death, he vowed to make their mutual dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman come true. But now that Zoro has come so far, what will be the next step he takes with this great sword to achieve the next level? Well, let's go back to Dressrosa, where we are actually given our first hint. After the fight against Pika, Zoro recalls a conversation with Mihawk where he is told that every weapon can be turned into a black blade like mine. You probably guessed it by now, but I truly believe that Zoro will need to first turn Wado and Ichimonji into a black blade in order to close the gap between himself and Dracule Mihawk, and this will most likely happen sooner than we think. Now, if you look at Zoro's dialogue with Gikumaru in the early stages of Wano, we learn that black blades are forged through constant battle. With this, we can assume that the first sword Zoro will be able to forge into a black blade will be Wado and Ichimonji. This is because, like I said earlier, it is the sword that Zoro has had the longest. It is also the sword that Zoro originally used haki with all the way back in Alabasta, and the sword that allowed him to actually cut steel. All of these things make Wado Ichimonji the perfect candidate to become Zoro's first black blade. We also find out before the raid on Onigashima that if Zoro is able to forge a black sword, then that blade's grade is able to increase, meaning if Zoro is able to take Wado Ichimonji to that level, he will have his first supreme grade sword and the next step in Zoro reaching his ultimate goal. Despite this, however, there still lies something that Zoro needs to progress even further beyond. Sandai Kitetsu and the future. Ah yes, Sandai Kitetsu. Another one of the regular degler normal grade swords. You can see why I saved this one for last, because it's quite clearly the weakest link among all sword blades so far. I mean, damn, even Yubashiri was a higher grade sword than this, and Zoro lost that all the way back in Eni's lobby. And yes, it's a cursed sword, which is cool and all, but even if Zoro were to somehow forge this into a black blade, it would only be graded as highly as the Shigi sword she got off from Mr. 11 back in the Alabasta saga. Dedicated Zoro fans like myself had hoped that back when we were introduced to Nidai Kitetsu at the beginning of Wano, he would replace it with that. It looks like Oda has other plans. However, I think I know what that may be, so let's get something straight. Zoro doesn't really throw away his swords for no reason. He usually replaces a sword after it breaks, like against Mihawk in the original battle, but I know what you're thinking. Who the hell at this point in the story would be strong enough to break one of Zoro's swords? I mean, think about it. You would need some seriously monstrous strength and haki to achieve something like that. And you know where you could find some seriously strong people? In none other than the much anticipated arc of Elbaf that has just begun. It would make complete sense that this is where Sandai Kitetsu finally breaks, and Zoro realizes that he needs a new sword to get stronger. Just look at Dory and Broggy back in the garden. Those two were so strong that they managed to easily tear a giant hole in a sea monster that would swallow entire islands whole. Now imagine with the newly introduced giant with a special bounty of 2.6 billion berries. Zoro will have to face off with Loki to protect the people of Elbaf on at least one occasion once he is set free, and I can't forget to mention the strongest Holy Knight that looks exactly like Shanks, who is Mihawk's former rival, arriving in Elbaf. The only difference is this Shanks has two arms and might be the man who breaks Zoro's Sandai Kitetsu, forcing him to finally replace the sword. But I would be foolish not to go through what we learned of Zoro during Egghead Island, the first arc after he progressed so far in his strength during Wano, the country of samurai. Now, ever since the time skip, there has been two things fans have wanted to see from Zoro. One is him opening his eye that has been closed since the time skip, and obviously is a reference to his training with Mihawk. Secondly, it's his trademark power-up Ashura we've seen during Eddie's Lobby and Sabaody. Now, eventually we would see him bring it back with Kankazaki coding to scar Kaido during Wano. But the reason I am bringing this up now is because who forced him into using Ashura in the first place? That was Kaku, the second strongest CP9 agent, who is now a part of the CP Zero, and this is the first Zoro battle I want to highlight during Egghead Island. We would see it begin with Zoro waking up casually and blocking Kaku's Rankaku attack, and go on to overpower his awakened Giraffe Zoan Delphoid with ease. It's like Oda wanted the fans to see how far Zoro has grown since the time skip, or well, since Enies Lobby. Now, after the Wano arc, the warlords have been abolished for these mini warlords Lunarian demons called the SSG, or the Seraphim. Oda has actually confirmed them to have Armin Haki and Observation Haki recently in an SBS. We kind of figured when S-Hawk cut a piece of Amazon Lily off and Yonko Blackbeard had to use Armin Haki to block the attack. Now, we all know that Blackbeard doesn't use Haki that clear cut usually, so it was surprising to see Blackbeard go instantly to his Haki rather than his Delphoid abilities. Now, the reason I am mentioning this is because Zoro actually confronts S-Hawk on numerous occasions during Egghead Island. His first clash with Mini Mihawk was very brief, as Zoro says S-Hawk is not the same, he actually has a spark of humanity, still referencing Mihawk being a cold savage and having no humanity was cool to see by Zoro. Another thing which was cool by Oda was giving S-Hawk Mr. 1's Delphoid ability, as Zoro noticed as he evaded his flying slash. We then see Zoro do multiple combo attacks with Kaku, like teaming up with Kaku is crazy. That doesn't do much damage to the Lunarian durability. Now, of course, Zoro would later realize, oh wait, these are the same Lunarians that he fought during Wano when it comes to King, and would reveal the weakness to Luffy, Lucci, and Kaku as they were confused. Luffy even compared these durability to Kaido, which says a lot on Zoro's power because he's beat King while having to figure out his weakness. We then see Zoro block S-Hawk's attack meant for Shaka with relative ease, and that was the last time we actually see Zoro go against S-Hawk, but after we would just see them all captured in these bubbles, so we could assume that Zoro, knowing the weakness of the Seraphim, was able to defeat S-Hawk. Though there isn't confirmation and this is done off screen, you could say I'm assuming, but until I'm actually proven wrong, I'm gonna go with this idea. I remember during the Enies Lobby arc, Frankie made an iconic statement where he stated if Luffy never fought Lucci, they would all be dead, and Nami would piggyback off this statement, stating Luffy always knows who to fight. So when Egghead Island started off with Gear 5 Luffy coming off a Kaido win, though he had a lot of help in asterisks of course, fought an awakened Zoan Rob Lucci, the strongest CP0 agent we have seen in a rematch. It was cool to see this time the Straw Hat Pirates got so powerful that Zoro and Sanji were capable of fighting Lucci as well, with Zoro blocking a bloodlusted Lucci from killing Vegapunk. I liked how Oda actually highlighted Lucci's entire leg coated in Armin Haki to show that Zoro was not just fighting a scrub. Luffy notices the Zoro-Lucci fighting going on and asks Zoro if he needs some help, obviously a callback to Enies Lobby because of how strong Lucci was, which of course Zoro refuses and tells Luffy to actually focus on Kizaru. I feel like Oda placed these statements to showcase Lucci wasn't a weak opponent by any means for Zoro. We even see Zoro instantly using Conqueror's Haki coding right off the bat during the battle, as of course this is an awakened Zoan. You should go not all out, but you should try at least. And the fact that Lucci went straight into his awakened zone that he previously used to fight Gear 5 Luffy shows how powerful Zoro is. Lucci was not playing around when it comes to Zoro's powers and ability. Zoro even says to Lucci's face he is not worthy of fighting his Yonko captain with his awakened form. And Lucci replies, I guess I'll handle the vice captain as a consolation prize. Pretty much saying that, yes, a vice captain to a Yonko is a pretty good prize to bring to the world government. Oda really wanted us to respect Zoro's opponent for the Egghead Island arc, and Zoro Lucci wasn't a low div, just off the face that this fight was taking a while for the conclusion, with even Jinbei stating this is not the time to be picking fights when he noticed both parties were getting fired up during the battle. And Zoro even admits Lucci is a tough opponent, and is quite shocked that Lucci believed he was in control of the fight. We even see Lucci knock Zoro's sword out of his hand, showing Lucci's power was not to be played with, but we already seen what he did to Sentomaru earlier. Lucci was vicious. When Jinbei told Sanji that Zoro was still fighting, Sanji was shocked. Sanji even said Zoro was a liability, which made him turn it up a notch as he evaded an array of hand pistols while also retrieving a sword and that was knocked out earlier of his hand, and dealt great damage, making Lucci cough up blood and scarring him as well. But Rob Lucci still standing even after the devastating blow was pretty cool to see. And of course, Lucci being in Awakened Zone, it was not surprising that he didn't go down that easy, as he growls at Zoro as if to let him know the fight is not over and his animalistic instincts are kicking in. Jinbei then erupts, stating Zoro has already won this fight, just off the fact that Lucci's in such a rough shape as he's scarred as well, and grabs Zoro while attacking Lucci, who blocks the attack and is still conscious. Like I said, Oda wanted us to respect Lucci's power as Zoro's opponent, but still understood that the fans need to see that Zoro's power has reached high heights after the Wano arc. Now to me, Wano was the arc of Haki, with Luffy and Zoro both obtaining the ability to coat their attacks and conquer his Haki. So when we see Kizaru, Luffy, Lucci, Zoro, and even Jinbei instantly notice Saturn's Haki, I thought that was really cool. And then we see Lucci bait Zoro and trying to see where that huge amount of Haki is on the island where the rest of the Gorosei arrived. Finally, let's talk about Jinbei feeling Mars's Haki and panicking instantly. This is the same Jinbei who felt Shanks' Haki in Wano, so he's not foreign to great amounts of Haki. The reason I mention this is to understand why Zoro clashing with Venus Juro at the end of the arc was such a big deal. He honestly feels like a boss battle and becoming the world's greatest swordsman for Zoro, and with him having a Kitetsu blade as well and a mythical Zoan-like power bestowed upon him by Imu, the final villain of One Piece. Also, the fact that he's immortal, with him also cutting the Labo phase in half casually, showing his swordsmanship strength is not to be underestimated. Even the way Venus Juro defeats all the pacifistas with that ice-like power in such a short time shows how effective he is when an objective is given to him. Zoro beating him would mean all that is left is Dracule Mihawk. Now, the only swordsman to have a greater skill than Mihawk might be the legendary samurai Ryuma, who also forged his blade into a black blade and defeated a dragon, unlike Kozuki Oden and Zoro, who only scarred the mythical creature. Though context, Kaido being the dragon does matter. All I'm trying to say is Thriller Bark's zombie of Ryuma is nothing to the real Ryuma, which is why I believe Zoro having 3 black blades, as he is the only 3 sword style user, would be awesome to see and make him not only the world's greatest swordsman, but maybe the greatest swordsman in history. But of course, we need to see Ryuma and may also have to see the strongest swordsman of the Void Century, who probably has a black blade as well. Now, I must admit, naturally in the real world, a pirate's main weapon was a sword, so it's not surprised Oda puts so many powerful swordsmen in the story, from the Pirate King Goldie Roger, who Kaido said had the strongest Haki with his supreme grade sword Ace, to his vice captain Silver's Rayleigh, who was known as the Dark King, to the samurai who joined them on the last journey to Laugh Tale and Kazuki Oden, capable of defeating Kaido if he had the chance and not distracted, to Shanks losing an arm and still being a Yonko who can mimic the Pirate King's attack with Divine Departure, and seemingly looks to have the strongest Haki in the story currently. Then there's Law, the worst generation member with his crazy Delphi ability, and then Fujitora, the admiral with a supreme grade and the gravity Delphi, and Vista, who is very proficient in Haki that Oda highlighted him attacking Akainu alongside Marco. And Mihawk also respected Vista's name during the war. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all these powerful characters is because they use a sword, which is also to highlight the world's greatest swordsman is an achievement worth praising. That's why when Brand New said that Mihawk had greater sword skill than even Shanks, it was a big deal. Obviously, it caused a lot of controversy on who's stronger, Mihawk and Shanks, which I made a video on that. You guys can check that out. To end things off, I want to reiterate that to climb to the pedestal of the world's greatest swordsman, Zoro still has quite a way to go. But I think that these points that I highlighted will be the step Zoro needs to take to ultimately reach that next level. I seriously cannot wait to see how he will grow as a swordsman and how he eventually defeat the monstrous Dracule Mihawk. Let me know what you guys think will be Zoro's next sword in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification because there will be a huge 1 hour long documentary dropping this month later on.